Welcome to another episode of the Two Posh Podcast. I am your host, Gabrielle, and I'm here today with my husband, Patrick, who's
Hello.
co-hosting with the most inspirational guest I think we have ever had on. We
Oh, whoa.
welcome Ocean Eagle.
Let's set that bar really high right off the bat.
Yes. I mean, we're recording on an off day just because you are here in town, and we want to make sure we had you on the show. We are very appreciative
I'm so grateful.
that
Thanks
you're
for having
here.
me.
And I want to jump right into your life. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up. Give us the whole rundown. What makes you Ocean Eagle?
Give you a little bit of how I got torn apart.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, so I could build myself back up on my own. So,
yes.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area. I was born in the Bay Area in California, and from a very young age, life was very traumatic. My dad was a raging alcoholic. My mom was an alcoholic, and my dad was a rageaholic and a gambleaholic. So life was very uncertain.
Did you have siblings?
I had one brother at the time. Yeah.
Older, younger?
He was a year and 4 months older than me, 16 months apart. So Matt was my older brother. Very physically abusive to me in our childhood. Put up with a lot from Matt. So. And he ended up dying at 22
oh my gosh,
when I was 21. It's amazing that either one of us survived that childhood, actually. So, drugs and alcohol just took him down a deeper road than I went, But, growing up, I witnessed things that my dad did and that no kid should ever have to see, I watched my parents. I remember one time he dragged my mother out of the house by her hair. He came home drunk one day in the middle of a middle class neighborhood, middle of the Saturday, and he was mad. And he came home and just next thing I'm in the front yard playing, and he's dragging her out the front door on her back by her hair, and dragging her down the driveway and yelling and screaming at her. And it's like the first real physical thing that I can remember that happened. And then they were separated, and my mom came and said, "Hey, Dad's going to come over and we're going to talk." It was a Saturday morning, and we're going to get this show right off. We're going to go right into this shit here, man. So I remember when my brother and I was 7 and he was 8. And we said, okay. And Dad came in and had this kind of crazy look in his face and told us to go play. And that's the best I can remember. And then the next thing I hear are the voices or the screams that you never want to hear from your mother. You never want to hear these screams. And he didn't lock the door to the bedroom. So me and my brother walk over there. And we opened the door, and, I got a lot of blacked out memories of my childhood, but I could tell you what the smell was in that house. I could tell you the color of the carpet, the green shag carpet. I could tell you the color of the walls. And I looked down and I see my mom's green nightgown torn into 2 pieces. And there's my dad brutally beating and raping the hell out of my mother. And he's looking back at us naked while he's raping her and telling us to get the fuck out of the room, get your little fucking asses out of here. And then she's trying to look around him and tell us, boys, it's going to be okay, trying to calm us while she's in the middle of what she's going through. And my dad looked back at my mother and I can still hear the crack of her jaw with the back of his fist. And he's a very burly guy. He broke her jaw, then got off of her, and then came at us, with an erection, and is running at us and pushing us out of the room and locks the door. And then I'm left on the outside of the door just, please, Dad, stop. Please, Dad. Because he goes back and rapes her more. So I have permission from my mother to tell that story. I went a little deeper into this one. So when she watches, Mom, I love you. I love you, and you know I do. She's my best friend today. And that's a warrior right there, that woman. She never said a bad word about my father, But
is he still around?
He died some 14 and a half years ago now. And that was a big part of the work that I did around that man because he had a hold on me for a long time. That kind of wounding, that kind of trauma, and that kind of hardwiring, that stays with you the rest of your life. I mean, I'm 54 years old right now, and I've raised my own kids, and you don't just, there's always residue, so there's always work to do. So even now I can get a trigger,
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I was completely mauled by a chow when I was 10 years old,
What?
Yeah, chow maul. I got a scar here, back of my head, side of my head, and, just maul, almost killed me, and my brother pulled him off. And so even now, as I'm healed around, dogs, if I hear a dog start barking, it hits that trigger point, But I'm very quick with my process now. realize, recognize, and a reckoning with the wound on the spot, so it doesn't stay with me. So I noticed that triggers happen in the eyes, nose, the mouth, the ears, and then they send the trauma response to where that is in our 24 organs. And that's why people have disease, because they have stuck, stored, trapped energy on a cellular level in their bodies. So in my next book I'm writing is called The Cosmic Soul. I talk about black body mass and black body radiation. And when we can blow that stuff apart, we have to go through the toxic part first. It's like Pigpen and Peanuts. He's got that big black dust cloud around him. So we're actually calling in toxicity when we live in that energy. So we have to clear it. We have to clear that stuff.
So what happened? I mean, I have a question right off the bat, because our oldest daughter has a lot of trauma from certain things, and she has tried to go through therapy and then that MDR and whatnot, but she says she doesn't want to go back.
Well, I did 15 years, and we'll go into, I can talk about a lot more that happened. My dad used to lock us in vans all night, and
what?
Yeah, he'd lock us in vans all night when he was in card rooms, gambling and drinking. My mom, after that situation happened with, when my dad, raped my mother in front of us, I remember we were standing in the kitchen and my brother's there and my mom's there, jaws black and blue. She can't drink a cup of coffee, spilling it all over the place. My dad's got this crazy look in his eyes. You just don't understand, boys. You just don't understand. And he's right. I've never fucking understood. Never, never. 14 years ago, I held his hand when he took his last breath.
You did?
And I've never shed a tear for that man. No, I don't owe him one. But I had to do the work around that to realize, it took me 10 years to realize I didn't owe him a fucking tear. And finally let him go. And that's right after that's when I had my awakening. But and we'll talk about that later. But I did 15 years of on and off psychotherapy. I did 15 years of going to see my George, my psychologist, and I'd sit on his couch and we would do some EMDR and rapid eye movements. And, we'd do all this and the toggles and we did all that shit. The problem with that kind of work for me is you never heal anything. There's no healing work that happens. Right. Your life's all screwed up because you don't have the ability to make healthy choices and set healthy boundaries in your life. So you're back on the couch because you've got financial problems, relationship problems, children problems, anxiety and fear coming up. So they want to give you a pill. And you go back and you do a little process and then you package it back up and it goes back on the shelf. You never do the deep healing work. And everybody wants to look on the outside for that. And people want a quick fix. That's why people are doing ayahuasca and San Pedro and they're punching frog poison into their skin and they're smoking bufo, which is also frog poison. They're smoking. Everybody's looking on the outside for their answer. They are the answer. You're the answer. You always have been. All you got to do is look in the mirror. Michael Jackson wrote about it. He said, you want to make the world a better place? Take a look at yourself and make a change. And that's what you have to do. And everybody's looking on the outside and they don't want to do breath work, because I do breath work and we have to work at things. It's not going to go away like that. 50 years of, bad choices, it's not going to get healed overnight. So you have to be committed. The shirt says sacrifice,
Well, so how long does that take?
Everybody's journey is different, My last women's retreat in Sedona was 5 days with 8 women. And it's really special to hold a container like that as a man, because women are, they're so abused and so conditioned to be afraid of men, that when I can hold that container like that, and a container of love and safety. I had a couple of women running around with their shirts off the whole time. They didn't care. I'm just one of the people at that point. But some of them they have such profound revealings of the illusion that they're allowing into their life. And one of the women went home the retreat ended at noon on Monday. And she caught a flight and that night went home and said, I want a divorce.
Wow.
And because we have to start loving her. It's all about the work I do is all about self-love. Nobody fills my cup anymore. I fill my own cup. I don't need anybody to, to love me. I love myself. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm amazing. I'm just fucking amazing. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm beautiful. I'm just beautiful. I tell myself. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm smart. I'm just really damn smart. I don't need anybody to tell me that stuff. And, so I don't look for validation on the outside anymore. I remember when I used to walk into a group environment Like I'm going to be in one tomorrow night with Scott Tennant and some others from a nonprofit event. And I would used to walk into events like that, and I would look for two things: my competition. So I'd look for my alpha male, and I would point that one out, right? And I need to target that guy, so I knew to stay away from him. And then I would look for the prettiest woman, and I would look at that woman and stare until she made eye contact with me to give me my validation, and then I could release my gaze. So I realized that I would do that because that was all from a very wounded place. That was all from a place of low self-esteem and needing to know that I was attractive, right? Now I just walk in and I'm the truth. Now I walk in and it's like a presence just walked in the room. Not an ego way. It's just like most people aren't used to being around a fully present human being. Like I'm nowhere else. I'm right here. I'm not there. I'm not there. I don't have an agenda. I'm just here to show love and drop love bombs all over the place. And people just aren't used to that. It's very rare.
So I want to go back a little
Go
bit.
back.
Like when this happened with your dad,
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
real traumatic event, and they were not living together anymore. They were
They were already separated.
separated. So
Yeah.
how did that continue?
We were in San Jose. My mom immediately moved us, became a single parent, she didn't have an education. She had to walk with a limp. She had polio when she was 4.
Oh my gosh.
And so she went to work, I think, at Firestone selling tires over in San Mateo. And my brother and I immediately latchkey kids, 7 and 8 years old. All that trauma that just happened, there was no therapy. There was no talking about it. My mom didn't bash my father over it. She just took us away from the man. And so I don't really remember. That was 3rd grade. I don't really remember much of 3rd grade. And then she moved us back to West Texas. My mom grew up in Roscoe, Texas, outside of Sweetwater. And so she moved us back. And, as a kid going through all that and coming from the Bay Area, going to a town of 1,300 people, living in we were 2 miles outside of Roscoe, right on the other side of a ditch from a railroad track, in a wood shack on the corner of a cotton patch that my grandparents raised all 5 of their kids in, and they never owned it. Mr. Walmuck, who owned the farm, owned that the whole time and let them stay there all those years because my uncles and my grandfather would plow his fields. Wow. So it was a wood shack, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, no air conditioning, no heat in the middle of West Texas. So, we'd go in the kitchen and pull open the oven door and close the doors to the kitchen to get warm in the winter, and then the sandstorms would hit and we'd have to broom the whole house out because the sand would come through the holes in the walls.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we were poor, really poor. And but what happened for me was the kind of split between where the direction my brother took and that I took, because I was a very gifted athlete. I was very gifted. But, I went to 11 schools, so I never got to get grounded in anywhere.
11 schools.
11 schools.
So what was your favorite sport?
Well, I was a quarterback at Sweetwater Mustangs. I was a quarterback there, and I loved it. And I took the team to a 10-0 JV season, and the varsity pulled me up to the playoffs. W.T. Stapler was the coach back then, and I didn't realize till not just recently, as I looked back through my life, that I was always a leader. Even though I was alcoholic, using drugs, all this shit that I did going on in my 20s, I was always a leader. And so I loved leading the team, and I was the quarterback that if I threw an interception, I made sure I made a beeline for that guy to decleat him, so he didn't want to pick one off again.
Right.
But so going forward, my mom and stepdad, we owned a bar in Sweetwater. So she married another guy named Earl. My dad was Tommy Earl. So she goes to West Texas and marries Earl Craig. And Earl Craig owned Uncle Funky's.
Oh my gosh.
It was a bar in Sweetwater, Texas.
And was he a better husband to her?
No, he was a dog shit. He was an alcoholic. He was a total raging alcoholic. It's like Earl and my mom just drank together. They ran the bar, and it was a hot mess. And I mean, we're in Sweetwater, and I got called up to varsity to go to varsity, and we were probably going to win the 4A championship because it's such a strong team. And right as I got called up, my mom and Earl said, "We're moving. We're moving to San Angelo, 100 miles away." I'm like, so they get rid of the house on the lake and they have me move in because I didn't want to leave. I said, "I'm staying," and my grandparents were there in this little shack, so I stay with my grandparents, and my grandmother, drives me into school and stuff. And But eventually I was a really angry kid. I was really angry, and we'd get big leads in the playoffs, and the coaches weren't putting me in the game. They kept promising me, put me in. And my mom and my stepdad came to one of the playoff games, and I was like pacing we were up 35-0 in the third quarter, and I'm like looking at the quarterback coach. I'm like, you can put my ass in the game. I was really angry. And then he didn't.
Right.
So I walked out to the parking lot and I quit. I said, fuck you guys,
Oh.
And that was kind of a pattern as I would go in. Like I went to San Angelo and got into the San Angelo football program, and a lot of politics in 5A when you're in the Odessa Permian Conference.
Oh gosh, yeah.
A lot of politics involved, and the quarterback coach was really upset because you should be our quarterback, and then they weren't going to let me. It wasn't going to happen, and all this. That really started ramping up my drinking at that time. I started drinking a lot.
That young?
Oh yeah, 14, 15 years old. I was a DJ in Uncle Funky's. I would spin records for these old cowboys and cowgirls, and we'd play country music, George Strait, the Bellamy Brothers and stuff. And then about 10:30, they'd start screaming at me for some 38 Special and some rock and roll because they were getting lit. We had one of those light up dance floors.
Oh yeah.
And I danced with my grandmother on that dance floor many times. She was drunk too.
Oh.
But I loved my grandmother. But she was one of my best friends. I used to sit on the back porch and drink beer and eat raw jalapenos with her out in West Texas. So, but yeah. So, going forward, I ended up walking away from the football program, and the baseball coach said, I don't know what happened with the football team, but you can play baseball for me. So I was a very gifted baseball player, and I went to school on a baseball scholarship in Houston.
Okay.
I went to a Cincinnati Reds tryout camp after my senior year in high school, and Chuck Lamar, who ended up later being the general manager for the Tampa Bay Rays, he walked up to me and said, where are you playing baseball next year? I said, well, I don't. And I had just learned how to be a catcher 2 weeks earlier because I wasn't very fast to be an outfielder anymore, but I had a cannon for an arm. And I said, well, I don't have a scholarship. And he goes, give me your phone number and go sit by your phone tomorrow. I got a call the next day and said, I don't know who you are, but, Chuck Lamar says I need to give you a scholarship. So you got a scholarship to come play for us.
Nice.
That's how I got my scholarship. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then tell me about, so you're drinking the whole time you're playing?
Oh, yeah. Drinking, shoot, in one of my college conference games, I had a bullet of cocaine in my back pocket. And yeah. I did a lot of recreational drugs in my late teens. 16, 17, 18, everybody was doing something, and I was playing around with all that stuff. I was kind of a chameleon because I'd moved so much. So I could fit in with the preppy group, and I could fit in with the dregs too. So I was kind of able to, and that's the gift of gab. It's kind of what got me into sales later on in life, and I was able to kind of navigate all forms of human beings. So I had to, if I wanted to survive.
So then, what did you do for work? Like when you got out of college?
Well, I bounced around to a few colleges.
Oh, you did?
And but eventually I settled in the car business. So I started selling cars, and did that for 9.5 years, all in my 20s. It's a car business. You can pretty much, walk up and take a crap on the general manager's desk, and if you could still sell cars, you still had a job. It's about rolling iron off the lot, and I was really good. And but in San Angelo, I met my first wife. I met Dana Devon. And she later on became the main host for the television show Extra. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, the blonde
Dave
and Dana Devon. Yeah, we were married. I was with her as we launched her career. We were married for 4.5 years. But right after my last car accident, because by the age of 25, I had 3 DUIs and 4 total cars. I'd been in a Mexican jail, beat up by federales,
What?
Oh, yeah.
What did you do for that?
What did I do?
Yeah.
Went over to Mexico and got really drunk, and it was
a blur.
It was a mess. I was a hot mess back then. Subconsciously, when you have that kind of trauma in your childhood, you're just subconsciously you're trying to end it. You just want to end the pain, You just want to end the pain. You don't want to feel anymore. And that's why people drink and use drugs, and that's why they use extracurricular things in their lives, because they don't understand that why do I keep having these cycles of human beings in my life in these situations, and it's you that's doing it. When you're in the victim mode, you can't get to the other side. you're stuck. You're blaming everybody. You're blaming that person on the freeway for cutting you off. Of course, that person woke up that morning and said, "How am I going to fuck up Ocean Eagle's day today?" That's not what happens. Like, it's how we perceive things, and it's how we handle the energy in society. And when we're wounded inside and we're stuck and we have all this energy trapped in us, we can't live in a place of just peace and calm. And once I've exercised, and we'll go over something a little bit about how that's happened for me and how I'm able to just become real present and how I have access to my emotions that you just saw. I have a lot of love and compassion for my inner child, and he's back now. He can come play now because I make choices that make my inner child feel safe to come home and play, and he was lost in the spirit world for a long time.
So when you met your first wife,
Dana.
What kind of relationship was that?
We drank a lot. I met her I just came out of one of my major accidents where I ran my car into a dining room. And
a dining room.
Yeah, well, no. This was the one where I threw my head through a windshield. I got a scar here, and my head I slammed into a Park Suburban at 3:30 in the morning, and my head went through the windshield, made a hole with this scar, and came back through the windshield here, and my face was just a hamburger, So I laid on my mom's couch at age 25 for about a week and a half with Neosporin on my face 5 times a day, just trying to heal it all up. And a month and a half later, I'm back in the bar, and I meet Dana, and Dana had just got her first television gig as the news anchor in Market 185 in San Angelo, Texas, and we got drunk, had sex, and fell in love in that order. And pretty typical bar scene,
all in the
bar
same
romance,
night,
all in the same night, all done. So, but Dana and I, she immediately got hired away to Midland, Odessa, so to a little bigger market. So I went with her, and we got married in Midland. And she was the 6 and 10 ABC News anchor in Midland, and I got my first job as a manager of a dealership in Monahans, Texas. So I knew the guy who was the GM, so I drove an hour each way every day to go manage this little little Monahans, Texas car dealership. And we were there about I don't know how long we were in Midland, but then Memphis called. So we moved to Memphis, and I helped negotiate the contract. She got the job for the 5, 6, and 10 ABC News anchor for Memphis. She won an Emmy there.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
I was I got a job as a general sales manager of a very large Honda dealership. So at 27, I was GM of a Honda dealership that sold 300 cars a month, and running the new car department, used car department, finance department. And she was doing what she was doing. And then we negotiated a new contract for her. And then right after we negotiated this new contract, the television show Extra calls. And Extra called. And then I was involved in those negotiations. And so she got permission from the GM to fly out and interview to Burbank. And long story short, Dana was really good at what she did, and she got her dream. She signed a $250,000 contract, and we moved to Burbank, and we drank a lot. I was drinking a ton back then. I was like, my nights were alone because she didn't get home till 11 or 12 every night, being the news anchor for the television ABC. So we go out there, and I didn't last 6 months in Burbank. That was not my people. That was not my tribe, man. No. I went to my first Seinfeld exec party because she was, the weekend anchor behind Marino Boyle at the time, and then Lisa Gibbons, and then Dana got the show later. And this was all after we were apart. But I went to the first Seinfeld exec party, and guards at the stairs for upstairs. There's cocaine going everywhere, and nobody wanted to know anything about you. They're just, I mean, I'm sorry, just low scum of the earth. What kind of car do you drive? Who do you know? Name dropping left and right, and telling you all about what they do and how amazing they are, and none of them were
real.
None of them were real. It was all fake. And I was from West Texas, so so what it did for me though is I got sober. That during that time I was there 6 months, and my dad in the Bay Area had quadruple bypass surgery. And I was still, I'd come in and out of my dad's life, in various stages later on. And he asked if I would come up and help him recover he's got staples all in his chest. And he was in this horrible relationship with my stepmother, 30 years of just toxicity with those two, just horrible. And I said, yeah, I'll come up and help you out. So I go up to the Bay Area. My idea of helping my dad out was taking his Lexus to the Saddle Rack Country and Western bar that my stepbrother's dad ran. And I used to bar back in that thing when I was like 20 and living in a basement. And Big Andy came in and I got drunk that night, drunk as shit, but I didn't black out. And it's like, I'm a blackout drinker. When I drink that much, I black out. And so I drive home at 3:30 in the morning, and there's my dad sitting up in a chair, looking at me with just these eyes of complete disappointment. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like,
that's what did that?
I was like, yeah, all the car wrecks, none of that shit did it. You know, it's
But
like
your dad's eyes?
my dad's eyes.
Wow.
I said, I looked at myself, I thought to myself, oh my God, that piece of shit's disappointed in me.
Oh.
That's how low I've fallen. That's how.
Wow.
And our energy, goes where our focus goes, our energy flows. My focus was I was never going to be my father. I'm never going to be that piece of shit. And I go up in the mirror that night, in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I looked in the mirror and I just hated who I saw. Absolutely hated who I saw. And I knew at that moment that I would never drink again. And I said, I'm never, ever going to fucking drink again. And I white knuckled it for about 8 days. About 8 days, I was with Dana at the time. She loved to drink. And, even when I went back from the Bay Area, she picked me up with one of the interns from Extra, and they were both drunk. I was like, fuck. I was like, and then there was a big debacle right before Thanksgiving, the night before Thanksgiving, where Dana and this intern go out to this party and get drunk. And some guy brings them home at 2:30 in the morning, and, because she couldn't find her car, and comes and takes a crap in my apartment, and it's like, then I have Thanksgiving the next day. I got to go help her find her car, and then her brother and his wife's coming over, and it was just a shit show. That was on Thursday, Thanksgiving. That was 7 days into my sobriety. The next day on Friday, I needed help. And I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was a 10:30 at night candlelight meeting in Burbank, California. And I remember I was scared as shit. I was like, I know now because I've been to enough meetings that you can't hide when you're a newbie. So I walk into this meeting thinking I'm hip, slick, and cool, and I'm going to walk in and this black woman, this very large African-American woman walks over to me and just doesn't say a word. Just reads me and just bear hugs me. And she has big boobs and she throws my head into her chest. And I'm like frozen. I'm like, what the fuck does this woman want from me? Because, it's like I was just, and then she whispered into my ear in a way that, a mother would whisper to you. She goes, baby boy, you never have to feel like this again, one day at a time if you don't want to. And I just felt my whole body just, every cell just poured into her. And I said, okay, I'll stay. And I don't remember anything about that meeting, but at the end of the meeting, I looked at her and I said, what do I do now? She goes, well, tomorrow morning, Saturday, and at 7 o'clock, we show up here and we help clean this hall as a way to be of service to this group. Why don't you show up and grab a broom? And 6:30 in the morning, my then wife says, where the fuck are you going? And I said, I'm going to go down and help clean this hall. And she says, why? I said, because I want to be sober more than anything in the world. And I showed up and I helped clean that hall.
What did your wife think about that?
I knew at that moment that Dana and I were not going to.
Oh, you knew?
I knew at that moment I wasn't going to get sober with her. And she got her dream. I helped her do that. It's a thing I've done in my career. Is I've helped people and women excel, and I've put myself in the back seat, to do that. And that's I've burned my Superman cape now, so I come first now, but it's a learned thing to do that. But when I immediately left her, I went and got in a hotel room for a while until I figured things out. And I started going to meetings in Santa Monica and Venice. And I started a chain of 630 AA meetings my first year. I went morning, noon, and night. Yeah. This old little redheaded Irish guy, Jack Rosenbaum, a little scruffy guy, had seen me coming to meetings, got a bad toupee, all he did, he was retired, all he did was sponsor guys. And he goes, you got a sponsor? I said, no, I don't have a sponsor. He goes, you fucking got one now. I said, I do. He goes, yeah, but you got to do one thing. I was like, what's that? Everything I tell you to do. If you don't want to do that, then go find someone else. And I was like, what do you want me to do? He said, go over there and start picking up cigarette butts. All right. And he said, when the meeting's over, I want you to come out here. I want you to pick up cigarette butts. What else you want me to do? I said, why don't you stand at the door and I want you to shake everybody's hands as they walk in and say, hi, at that time I was Marty. Hey, I'm Marty, I'm an alcoholic. Then I want you to go sit in the front row at the meetings and I want you to take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your fucking mouth because you got nothing anybody wants to hear. I want you to suit up, show up, sit down, and shut the fuck up till you got 90 days of sobriety. And I want you to work 12 steps with me as soon as possible. And I said, okay.
90 days is the thing.
Yeah, well, we worked the steps in about 40 days. We did them quick, you know. I remember when I did my 4th step, I don't know if you know, well, when I did my 3rd step is like turn your life and your will over to a power greater than yourself. I didn't believe in God. You know, I didn't have a God of my understanding and struggling on that step. And Jack walked me out to the beach and he goes into the ocean. He goes, move that. I said, move what? He said, move the ocean. I said, I can't move the fucking ocean. He said, that is a power greater than you. Why don't you come out here and pray to this until you figure out what your idea of God is? And I said, I can do that. So 2, 3 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I'd go out to the ocean, get on my knees and say, God, help me. Just God help me. That's all. I just wanted some help. You know, I wanted relief. And I remember when I did my 4th step with Jack. 4th step is your inventory, your resentment list, your sexual inventory, your fear list, you know. And I thought I had some badass list I was going to tell Jack, you know, all my crazy ass stories from being drunk, my drunkalog and all this stuff. And that old bastard fell asleep 3 times while I was reading that thing to him. He'd heard so many of them. I had no story that was greater than anybody else. That's the grandiosity that alcoholics. Yeah, it's the grandiosity alcoholics have. It's like you think you got some. I'm not that fucking special.
Right.
What he did was, and he looked at me, he goes, can I tell you something? Yeah. He goes, you're the most selfish, self-centered son of a bitch I've ever met in my fucking life. I said, really? He goes, yeah, you're a dick. I'm like, huh. He's like, I thought people liked me. He goes, no, everybody thinks you're just full of yourself. I'm like, so what he did was, that's a kind of a standard line I realized later he did to all of his sponsees to get you to right size, get you humble and get you ready to do the real work. So I'm very grateful for that time with Jack. It set a really solid foundation. I've never had the desire to drink alcohol since. And I've been sober, you know, November will be 24 years.
Have you ever, in those 24 years, had a relapse ever?
I'm sober 24 years.
That's incredible.
Only time alcohol touched this mouth was I was at a pool party and there were a bunch of clear cups. And I picked one up and somebody set a glass of clear wine, white wine, down next to my water. And I grabbed it and it went into my mouth and I spit it out. And that's the only time alcohol has ever touched these lips in 24 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's poison. It's called akul, a flesh-eating demon. That's what it's named after, you know. I think they spend $6 billion a year in advertising alcohol because we don't take it naturally. We have to be sold it. It's not natural for our bodies and it creates toxicity. Yeah. And I'm not going to judge people for doing it. I understand what society's been created. I get it. But when you learn to have fun and live life, you know, from a really healthy place, shit, man, I have so much fun in life. I have the best human beings in my life. Not that you can't have people that drink alcohol in your life that aren't great, but I've got really solid human beings in my life. And if they're not, they don't get to be in my life. They don't get to be in my life.